The dynamic between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White is very interesting because clearly it's a relationship with a basis of respect. I mean, when Stephanie White was hired, Clark was thrilled, super excited. And coach said all the right things about coming in and coaching the Fever and coaching Caitlin Clark. Then, fairly early in the season, I would say there was a bit of a philosophical divide, but it never got to be completely worked out, right? And it wasn't as if they were at odds, but I noticed when they would talk about things, and for instance, when Caitlin Clark had come back from one of her injuries, and
she said it live. On national television, Caitlin Clark delivered the cutting words that instantly sent shockwaves through the league. While discussing her role after returning from injury, Clark acknowledged Stephanie White's coaching points, the need to be a better screener, to play off-ball more. But then, with an almost defiant edge, she boldly reiterated her absolute conviction. "I'm at my best with the ball in my hands." It wasn't just a statement of fact, it was a clear, unambiguous challenge to the coaching philosophy being presented by her own head coach. The message was unmistakable, a direct counterpoint broadcast for everyone to hear, creating an immediate, palpable tension that threatened to unravel their entire dynamic before it truly began. The silence that followed her declaration was deafening, signaling a deep philosophical divide laid bare for the world to see.
Out, right? And it wasn't as if they were at odds, but I noticed when they would talk about things, and for instance, when Caitlin Clark had come back from one of her injuries and Ari McDonald was there and they were asking about playing together, and Clark referenced some of the talking points Stephanie White has made, like being a better screener, about playing off ball, but then she, reiterated that she's at the best with her ball in her hand, the ball in her hands. And that reminded me of when I was there for the Liberty game, the first Liberty game that Clark got hurt in, not the one that she came back and exploded in. And before that game, there was a little bit of a hint of,
The initial hiring of Stephanie White had been met with immense enthusiasm, especially from Clark herself, who was reportedly thrilled. White arrived, saying all the right things about coaching the Fever and embracing her star player. Yet, the honeymoon period was incredibly short-lived. Fairly early in the season, a distinct philosophical chasm emerged. A fundamental disagreement about how the team, and specifically Clark, should operate. It wasn't an open feud, but an unaddressed tension simmered just beneath the surface, a crack in the foundation that fans quickly picked up on. The early respect was undeniable, but the cracks started appearing almost immediately, hinting at deeper issues to come.
And then fans took that and turned it into Stephanie White will destroy Caitlin Clark and all that. We never got a chance to see them completely gel. When Clark had come back, even when she was playing hobbled before the groin injury that ultimately ended her season, when the ankle injury compounded it, the Fever were rolling. They had won a couple of games in a row there, but not only just did they win them, they looked like a machine. And that was with Clark struggling to shoot because she was obviously hobbled with injuries. But then when the Fever go on and they win without Caitlin Clark, and clearly Stephanie White proves she's a hell of a coach, and the rest of the team steps up, Clark celebrated.
The first significant public manifestation of this divide came when Clark, recovering from an injury, was questioned about her role alongside teammate Erica Wheeler. She paid lip service to White's directives about playing off-ball and improving as a screener. But then, the real Caitlin Clark emerged. She doubled down, asserting that her optimal performance came when she had the ball, driving the offense, dictating the tempo. This wasn't merely a preference, it was a firm declaration of her identity as a player. Seemingly at odds with the team's strategy White was attempting to implement, it felt less like an adaptation and more like a quiet rejection on a very public stage.
The Fever go on and they win without Caitlin Clark, and clearly Stephanie White proves she's a hell of a coach, and the rest of the team steps up. Clark celebrated in that moment. And I know for a fact that they have a good relationship, right? So it's just intriguing because they never got a chance to fully flesh out their on-court relationship. They have a great off-court relationship, and so much has been made of their relationship since without us having a chance to actually see the substance. And then when Stephanie White says anything, it gets run with, like when she had talked about how important Kelsey Mitchell was to the team. I don't even forget the
This public exchange echoed an even earlier, perhaps more subtle confrontation before a pivotal Liberty game. White had once again stressed the importance of Clark playing off the ball, framing it as a way to give her a break and help the team's overall flow. Clark's response, while polite, carried a similar undertone of resistance. She acknowledged the potential benefits, a brief respite, team assistance, but quickly pivoted back to her core belief she is at her absolute best and most impactful when orchestrating the offense with the ball firmly in her control. It became clear this wasn't just a tactical debate, it was a clash of fundamental basketball philosophies, a power struggle brewing.
Please see the substance. And then when Stephanie White says anything, it gets run with, like when she had talked about how important Kelsey Mitchell was to the team. I don't even forget the exact comments, but it was the most innocent comment ever, especially when they're trying to re-sign Kelsey Mitchell in free agency. But it's like, well, she didn't say Caitlin Clark was the be-all, end-all of everything all the time, and therefore she, hates her. But regardless, Stephanie White was on with Sue Bird on her Bird's Eye View podcast and specifically talked about Caitlin Clark and said some things that I think fans will like to hear, especially coming from her.
How important was it to forge that relationship with her?
Fans and media seized upon these nuanced exchanges, blowing them up into a full-blown narrative of conflict. The philosophical divide was quickly sensationalized, with headlines suggesting Stephanie White was actively trying to destroy Caitlin Clark's game or stifle her unique talent. The public perception rapidly shifted from a cohesive unit to one fraught with internal tension. Every comment, every subtle gesture was analyzed under a microscope, exacerbating the pressure on both coach and player. The lack of a clear public resolution only fueled the fire, turning minor disagreements into perceived major power struggles, all playing out in the unforgiving spotlight.
And said some things that I think fans will like to hear, especially coming from her.
How important was it to forge that relationship with her for all the reasons?
I mean, really important. I'd had just a little bit of a relationship with Caitlin from calling her games a number of times, when she was in college, but it was very important. Look, she's obviously the centerpiece of everything that we do. And most importantly for me was just connecting and building trust. I don't know how she does what she does and handles it so gracefully. I'm not sure, myself as a 20.
Finally, Stephanie White had her moment to directly address the swirling speculation, appearing on Sue Bird's Bird's Eye View podcast. White didn't back down. This was her snap, not a shouting match, but a firm, unwavering articulation of her coaching philosophy that directly countered the perceived insults to her methods. She stressed the paramount importance of forging a deep, trusting relationship with Clark, not just as a star, but as a player who needed to be challenged and molded. White's words were a clear strategic response, asserting her authority and vision amidst the public scrutiny, laying down her uncompromising coaching tenets.
But I'm going to be honest, and I think that I certainly appreciate that about her. And I'm also the same kind of psycho that she is in terms of competitiveness. Now it comes out in different ways. But we both just really want to win, and we want to set ourselves and our teammates up for success. And so it was really important for me, right away with her.
So a few important things I think that were said there. Number one was she's the centerpiece of everything that we do. So that will be received really well out there amongst CCFC. And it's right? Everybody knows that, both on the basketball court and from the business.
On the podcast, White made a powerful statement that initially seemed to contradict the brewing conflict. She's obviously the centerpiece of everything that we do. This was an acknowledgement of Clark's undeniable importance, both on the court and as a business driver. However, this seemingly conciliatory remark was immediately followed by her firm, foundational coaching principle. I'm a firm believer that you have to coach and challenge your best players. This wasn't a retreat, it was a declaration. White was asserting that Clark's status as the centerpiece didn't exempt her from rigorous coaching. In fact, it demanded it, setting a clear boundary.
Kind of having to get through to her a little bit because she had a little bit of that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant DNA in her. And that's a great combination. So it's exciting to see how it goes going forward, because they didn't have a chance. They like each other. They trust each other. They're both great at what they do. So it's hard to see it not working out. And Caitlin, seeing what the team was able to do without her, that's got to be helpful in a certain sense to know what they're capable of. And then them knowing what they're capable of without her, and then knowing what she is capable of.
White didn't mince words about her coaching style. She described herself as a very honest, transparent coach, implying a directness that might ruffle feathers but was essential for trust. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a non-negotiable expectation for her players, especially her star. Her message was clear. There would be no guessing games, no hidden agendas. If a player had questions, they were expected to ask. This unwavering commitment to brutal honesty, a core tenet of her leadership, was her definitive snap back at any perceived challenges to her authority, demanding an equally direct response from her team. Perhaps the most telling snap from White was her stark admission, "I'm also the same kind of psycho that she is in terms of like competitiveness." This wasn't a casual remark, it was a direct challenge, a declaration of equal footing in the relentless pursuit of victory. While their competitive drives manifested differently, White was effectively telling the world, and Clark, that she possessed the same ferocious will to win. This statement put them on a level playing field of intense ambition, suggesting that any clash wasn't personal, but a byproduct of two elite psycho competitors clashing over the best path to success. Despite the public discussions and philosophical declarations, the on-court relationship between White and Clark never truly had the chance to fully blossom. Injuries plagued Clark, first an ankle, then a season-ending groin issue, preventing them from completely jailing on the court. The tantalizing possibility of seeing their respective philosophies merge remained largely unexplored. This left a void, a persistent what if, that only amplified the tension surrounding their public statements. The lack of resolution on the court only made the philosophical snaps and insults feel more significant and impactful, fueling speculation about their compatibility. Clark herself had a history of subtle defiance against coaching constraints. Early in her career, she famously likened her deep shots at Iowa to Steph Curry's, asserting that you don't tell Steph Curry not to shoot those. This mentality reveals a deep-seated belief in her own genius and an inherent resistance to being pigeonholed or limited. This prior insult to traditional coaching methods foreshadowed her reaction to White's directives, creating a pattern of a player who trusts her instincts above all else. It proved she wasn't new to standing her ground even against established basketball wisdom. White's coaching philosophy centered on specific areas for Clark's development, directly challenging her preferred style. The coach explicitly sought improvement in off-ball play, becoming a better catch-and-shoot threat, and understanding when to relinquish control to teammates. These were not minor tweaks, they were fundamental shifts that required Clark to evolve beyond her ball-dominant identity. White's insistence on these points was her firm snap, an unyielding demand for growth that indirectly pushed back against Clark's earlier insults about knowing her own optimal play. It was a direct, strategic countermove. A remarkable turning point and another subtle snap from White came when the Fever began to win without Caitlin Clark. Despite Clark being hobbled or absent, the team started looking like a machine, winning multiple games in a row. This period unequivocally proved White's coaching prowess and the depth of the team she was building. It was a powerful, undeniable demonstration that her system could thrive, even without its brightest star at full capacity. This success, while celebrated by Clark, also served as a quiet yet potent validation of White's approach, showcasing the potential for collective strength. Adding another layer to Clark's unyielding nature is her legendary competitive drive, often compared to the Michael Jordan Kobe Bryant DNA. Iowa coaches Lisa Bluder and Jan Jensen have even spoken about needing to get through to her due to this intense, sometimes defiant competitive spirit. This inherent psycho-competitiveness, which White herself identified with, explains why Clark might insult or push back against coaching directives that she perceives as limiting her path to victory. It's not malice, it's an extreme self-belief rooted in the same winning obsession that fuels legends. Even seemingly innocuous comments from White were amplified into perceived slights against Clark, adding immense pressure to their dynamic. White's remarks about Kelsey Mitchell's importance, made during re-signing efforts, were twisted by some fans into an implication that Clark wasn't the be-all end-all. This episode highlights the intensely scrutinized environment, where any statement from White could be reinterpreted as a subtle insult to Clark or a diminishment of her role. It forced White to navigate a minefield of public opinion, where every word carried disproportionate weight, further complicating their relationship. Despite the philosophical snaps and perceived insults, a crucial element of trust clearly developed between them. Clark herself posted a supportive message about Stephanie White during the Fever's impressive run, even while injured. This public gesture, seemingly out of character given the earlier tensions, demonstrated that beneath the surface of tactical disagreements, a genuine personal trust had formed. This bond was paramount for White, who stated that earning Clark's trust was essential before she could effectively challenge her. It hinted at a deeper understanding, despite the public drama. White's coaching performance during the season, especially navigating Clark's injuries and the team's subsequent success, was nothing short of remarkable. To rally a team under such circumstances and guide them to a strong finish was a testament to her unyielding leadership and strategic acumen. This remarkable coaching job served as a powerful validation of her methods, proving her ability to instill a winning culture even when her star player was sidelined or challenging her approach. It was a silent yet profound snap back at any critics who doubted her capacity to lead. The challenge for White wasn't just about coaching a generational talent, but about integrating her into a system where she could excel and elevate others. White's emphasis on Clark learning to trust her teammates more and relinquish control at times was a direct counterpoint to Clark's ball in her hands philosophy. This wasn't an insult to Clark's skill, but a strategic snap to encourage a more holistic team play. It required Clark to understand that her dynamism could be preserved and even amplified by a more balanced approach, making her an even more formidable weapon within a cohesive unit. The potential for a dynasty, even after a tough loss to the Aces, is palpable, but it hinges on how White and Clark ultimately reconcile their differing philosophies. The team's success without Clark, coupled with Clark's undeniable individual genius, creates a fascinating dynamic. Both know who Caitlin Clark is, an unprecedented talent. The question remains whether White's unyielding coaching demands can fully meld with Clark's fierce self-belief. It's a high-stakes chess match where every move, every word, every snap, and every insult will dictate the trajectory of this highly anticipated future. The stage is set for an epic, unresolved drama between two fiercely competitive psychos who, despite their public snaps and subtle insults, share an undeniable mutual respect and a singular goal: winning. They like each other, they trust each other, and they are exceptional at what they do. Yet, the question of whether Clark's intrinsic need for the ball and White's unyielding philosophy of challenging her best players can truly converge into a harmonious championship-winning symphony remains the sport's most compelling unanswered question. The tension is real, the stakes are immense, and the future promises either a dynasty or a continued clash of titans.